Thank you for coming out this evening. I want to talk a lot less and really give the opportunity to our awesome panelists. So please come on down. And while everyone's getting settled, I just want to just a round of applause for everyone that put this together. Salesforce for startups, really doing like a really great thing in the ecosystem. Workbench for this amazing space that you're witnessing and enjoying this evening, as well as my own thing, which is the NYC Enterprise Sales Meetup. So definitely look up that when you have an opportunity. It's all about sales process, and just a community where we can share really interesting ideas. That's my intro, but I want to give just a minute or so for each one of our awesome panelists to describe who they are and what they do. So Vivek,
Vivek Sharma, I'm the CEO and co-founder of Movable Inc., a New York-based SaaS company that helps large consumer brands market in the moment. And we do that by helping them change their emails after they've been sent out. And so emails can personalize the moment you open it. They can optimize on the fly, and they can contextually target you and know where you are, when you are, what device you're on, and who you are. And we are about a 65-person company. Most of our clients, about 200 Fortune 1000 brands, everyone from Yahoo to eBay to Airbnb to Macy's and United Airlines. So it really runs the gamut. And I think one of the really important things you need at an event like this or anywhere you attend is a good call to action. So I recommend you talk to our Chief Revenue Officer. Wave your hand, Tim. We're hiring tons of salespeople, and I understand there's some salespeople here.
Jeff.
Well, did I do that? Hi, Jeff Wald, founder and CEO of WorkMarket. We are a Union Square venture-backed company that provides a freelance management system to corporations. Our platform is utilized by companies that are managing thousands of freelancers, contractors, and consultants. So companies like SAP, Lockheed Martin, Yahoo use our software to manage thousands of contractors and consultants around the world. We are also hiring salespeople. And so happy to talk to anybody here about that. We will fight over that, Vivek. And very much look forward to talking to you guys about CRM platforms.
And Mike?
Yeah, I'll be quick. Delivery.com. We are obviously the best online ordering platform for what?
Seamless?
I don't know what that is.
I don't know.
Haven't heard that one.
Yeah, I don't know what that is. And like I said, we are the best online ordering platform for local businesses. We have over 11,000 local restaurants, wine and liquor stores, grocery stores, and you can schedule your laundry and dry cleaning all from one app, which is obviously our biggest differentiator between the others. We are more than Grub. We are the hub for more than just Grub. And I'm the head of sales and business development.
You're forgetting one thing, Michael.
Which is?
You're not hiring salespeople as well?
No.
Okay, there you go.
No, we are definitely hiring.
Okay, there you go. You got to get the pitch in for resources when you can. But thanks again, everyone, for joining us. I think this will be really interesting. And we want to talk about one of the biggest challenges when you're a startup is when do you flip that switch from we're kind of young, we're scrappy, we built a product, it's really cool, we're getting like a lot of really great traction, we have 2 people using it. But when you start to get to a point, you're really trying to think of, well, what's the next stage? How do I actually grow this company? There's a lot of different methods, but I really kind of want to give it up to each one of you to describe when did you flip that switch? When was the right time to say, we're at the stage of our startup, our company, where we know we have certain things going on, and now I need to grow the sales team. So I'll kick it off with Vivek again.
I think it's important to really cultivate a sensitivity about your company, and not like a gluten sensitivity. Actually, just this awareness about at any given time, there's certain things that are working okay. Actually, just 1 thing out of 10 has to work okay. To give you an example, in our first year, we weren't having a lot of success, and exactly 3 years ago, our monthly recurring revenue was about $200 a month. And we were convinced we were onto something, but the market was telling us that we weren't the geniuses we thought that we were. And it turned out that the thing we had to switch was selling to a very different buyer, and this happened to be enterprises. And this is a new market. We need to educate. We need to show them how to use this tool. We need to invest in customer success and strategy and advice like that. And it completely flipped the business. And we went from $200 a month to doing a $6,000 pilot to a $12,000 pilot to a $72,000 deal. And then we said, hey, this is the piece that's working. Let's double and triple down on it. And there's moments like that throughout the business. And it's important, especially as you get bigger, that you're still close enough to the details that you're able to sense these things happening and knowing that you're doing something and suddenly it's taking off and you need to replace yourself with someone else who can do that better, be it customer success or partner person or even finance and ops.
Right. That's kind of really interesting to point out is because a lot of people just assume that it's at the point in time when you maybe raise a big round of funding, but it's not necessarily the case. And I think, Jeff, you have a really interesting story because Work Market in and of itself is a network and not necessarily the traditional enterprise sale or enterprise software. So could you describe kind of like what your process was to kind of figure out, well, are we at the right size of our network to really start to scale this out?
So it's interesting. I called the company Work Market, but when we go and pitch to customers, I will say, look, there's a big difference between a platform, which is a piece of software to scale a process, and a marketplace. We have a marketplace, but it's just a feature of the platform. And so when we think about ourselves, we do think about ourselves purely as a piece of enterprise software. We raised a $10 million round, and that to us was not the signal to go and flip the switch. The signal to go and raise a $10 million round was that we were ready to flip the switch, right? Which for us meant, yes, I have a product in the marketplace. Yes, we're getting traction. But importantly to me was that I had the machine built, right? Where I had a marketing team that knew where to go to generate leads, that those leads came into a system, that they had data attached to them, that those leads then get appropriately fed over to the appropriate part of sales, right? Sales development reps, cold callers, inside sales or enterprise sales, and then those guys could take it through using the CRM that we had in place to then get to a signed contract to account management, right? Once I saw that machine working, that's when I went back to Union Square, Spark, and SoftBank and said, all right, give me a lot more money. Now it's time for me to go and ramp a sales force, to ramp a marketing spend, because the machine works. And what I didn't want to do was pour money into the top of the machine just to have it break at various points in the process, right? That's just inefficiencies.
That happens a lot. We have a lot of companies that kind of get the cart before the horse, proverbially, where they get a whole bunch of money and they haven't necessarily figured out what the actual process is. Mike, you have kind of also an interesting story because Delivery.com had been kind of going for a little while when you came on board, and what did you do to kind of get things going at Delivery.com and really start to scale up what the business was?
Yeah, I think to Jeff's point, you want to make sure that you have the mechanics working before you toss gasoline on the fire. Our business is really different. You don't go out and make a sale and all of a sudden you're dropping $100,000 into your bank account. We work off of a percentage of sales. So we acquire merchants and we do the marketing and we have a marketplace and we try to drive demand. And then we make our money, right? So things like LTV and CPA and those types of things needed to be in line in order to really scale our sales force. So the difference between startups is you probably don't have a ton of data to measure LTV. As long as you have your projected LTV and you feel like the mechanics are down, then go out and raise that big round and scale the team. So we're a little different than your typical the companies that you guys have here. So.
Well, I also think is really interesting that I think there's a lot of this debate around the growth of inbound channels versus the traditional enterprise sales where I kind of cut my teeth on. And so what do you see as valuable from your perspective? Are you doing the inbound, exclusive of sales? Are you bringing on more salespeople? What do you think is actually the right formula for your particular situation?
My team consists of, we have an outside team and we have an inside team, so we have guys on the phone that, are doing the 100 calls a day, and we have guys that are knocking on doors and getting kicked out of pizza places and that sort of thing. But, when we just lit up a out-of-home campaign, so we're doing a ton of Subway. I'm not sure if you've seen our Monday Night Football TV ads, but, when we do things like that, we get a ton of reverse inquiries, so we have a ton of stuff coming through the site. Salesforce powers that. I think it's a good mix of inside, outside, and then, reverse inquiry. But with the reverse inquiry, you have to have, a good partner with Salesforce or some other CRM tool that can pull that in and distribute parse out the menu and the contract and get everything activated on the site.
Well, that's definitely a good point, because none of this actually could ever happen unless you're actually capturing in some sort of system.
That's right.
And generally it's going to be the CRM system that you put in place. But before I jump into more of the kind of the technology and the process side, I kind of want to get your thoughts on this debate around the enterprise salesperson. I remember last year in GigaOM, some writer said the enterprise salesperson is dead. Do you believe that's true?
No.
No, I mean,
Check. I can tell you from our own experience, even in a digital world like this, FaceTime counts for a lot, and that same deal that might have come in at $10K suddenly turns into a $250K, $300K, north of $1 million deal. And relationships matter, and large companies operate in a very different way. And it's not just calling an individual at a perhaps a lower level that is just using the tool day to day, but you almost have to think about what is the strategy of the people with a buying decision. So we have personas built around what is a marketing manager, what do they spend their time, is this going to add more hours to their work week, what is the director of marketing thinking about, and then lastly the CMO. They don't care about the tools, and they care about the end result and what business value you're able to drive for them. And you do need field salespeople, and events are a great place to kind of pool everyone together in one place and pick them off and have these meetings lined up. And it just try it. Early on, every sale is an outside sale, and then you can start to optimize and figure out how much of my time am I spending on the phone, how much am I spending on lead qualification, how much am I spending on redlining contracts back and forth, and then you can start to find specialists that do each one of those things. But do all of it early on.
Somebody that knows how to organ to a company, get to the right decision maker, understand what the decision maker's pain points are, who in that decision-making process is going to be an advocate, a champion, who's a blocker, knowing how to go through a long consultative sales process, that's not something that's going to go away when you're dealing with complex enterprise software. And as easy as we might make the process, it's still complicated, right? Like, we try to simplify the process of engaging a freelancer, it's still going to be something that is incredibly complicated, and someone's not just going to be able to come in, create an account, and go. I'd love that to be the case, but it's just not a reality.
Now, so each one of your companies is now at a fairly good size, right? But there are obviously a lot of steps that got you to this point in time today, and obviously there are some things that you would have learned through that process. What were some of the the biggest challenges that you faced as you're building out your initial sales team? Because one of the clips I remember early on in my career was one of the most endangered species in startups is the VP of sales. So what was your perspective around hiring, around training, getting people up to speed, really building that really well-oiled sales machine? Anyone could start. Go for it.
We don't have a well-oiled sales machine, so I'm not sure. Look, I will say the most difficult part about it was the understanding that you have to turn the team multiple times. And that's going to be true in development, it's going to be true in product, it's going to be true in sales. The first group of salespeople that come in are not the people I have today. None of them. And that's not to say that the original group of people weren't great guys, they're just very different than the people I need today. The first group of people were scrappy, right? They were hustlers. They just went through walls and got stuff done because the product they were selling was shit. Right? Like, we were making it up as we went along. It didn't work. They'd do a demo. The site would crash. The customer would get onboarded, and then they'd get errors all over the place. That's a very different guy, right? I'm not pulling somebody out of SAP or Salesforce or Oracle to come and sell my product if that's the experience they're going to have, because it's going to take them way too long to get to their OTE. They are not going to want to deal with that process. Now that we are in a later stage, I am trying to recruit those people in, right? Because now I have a product that is proven. I've got a process that's proven. I've got leads coming in. They don't have to go hustle and get their own leads. Very, very different, the interface that I have now and the machine I have now and the product I have now versus that first group. But that first group, they got me my beta customers. They got me the initial people that helped do this. They created a huge amount of value, and then they couldn't grow and develop into the guy that has to go and sit down with the head of marketing at Yahoo. And so they had to go.
You had an interesting perspective.
Our first 2 salespeople are still here. My first sales rep, Ryan Pipkin, who's on the phone right now, closing a deal. I knew he'd never sold enterprise software before, and when I talked to people in my network, I wanted someone who would swim through a mile of mud and while we're trying to figure this out and get our early sales done. And we did that. We figured out a path, and he's been incredibly successful since, and he's still successful at the company. And my second hire, we knew something was working right, and it was time to scale this. And so we hired a chief revenue officer who could be a player coach, and we needed to build out that team. And so also standing over here. I think we've been fortunate. I know this doesn't happen with every company, but I spent a lot of time vetting candidates, being very thorough with reference checks, making sure that your early people can deal with ambiguity. And it's hard to know what to attribute success or failure to in an early day. Is it because you have a crappy product? Is it because you're getting leads from a place that you won't get them from later? Is it because your prospect is an early adopter? They want to try new technologies and be on the forefront. So it's hard to project this out in the future and say, this is definitely going to work, especially with so few data points. But then you have a theory, and you start to hire people, and good salespeople can sell the dream, but the later salespeople that come along need to be able to plug into that machine, and they're going to expect their great sales deck and the support from marketing and you doing enough with PR and that lead gen engine being there, and sales are handed over to them. And it's just a completely different profile, and you need to make sure that that sales department is the people you're selecting for completely change with that as well.
Yeah, I mean, again, our business is really different. My sale is made in the first 5 minutes of you walking into, Joe's Pizza, right? So, we look for guys who have really comfortable shoes.
That's a classic sales profile, the comfortable shoes.
Right, exactly. Don't walk in with a suit, right? Because they know as soon as you walk in with a suit and you're opening up the clipboard, they're like, get the hell out. So, you have to kind of look like you're a customer. And, you have to have a lot of scars because you're going to get kicked out. You're going to get kicked out of a bunch of places because they never want to talk to salespeople. They're flipping burgers in the back. They're, throwing the dough up in the air. That's like the last thing they want to talk about is technology. Early on, we looked at the credit card ISO world. You've got, hundreds, if not thousands of these independent sales reps out there banging on doors and selling credit card processing. So we looked at it and said, maybe that's a great model for us because we can get a ton of merchants everywhere in every single small town across the country. But what we quickly found out is after, recruiting probably about 5,000 of these people, what we also needed was we needed to drive demand, right? Because none of these guys make any money unless orders are being driven through the platform. So it's very different from the credit card, initiative where it's like you have a credit card processing machine, you're swiping the card and you get paid, right? They need to use that. But when we launch in Idaho, there's no demand for online ordering, so the guy that just signed up 10 restaurants, he's never going to make any money, right? So he's quickly gone. So we learned pretty quickly.
Interesting. Yeah, so I mean, obviously learning from kind of like the experiences, events, I think, work great. Trying to learn from other, like the motions of other companies and other sales processes. But I kind of want to move into at least the last few minutes that we have is, all this is great, but underneath all the growth, you need some sort of structure in place because, the classic line, if it's not measured, it doesn't exist. It definitely applies in sales, particularly when all those orders start, coming in, right? So what have you kind of put in place just to help manage the growth of your sales team?
Yeah, I'll start. So I remember walking in the door at Delivery.com, and I sat down with the sales ops guy, and there was a stack of insertion orders in his inbox. It was probably a foot high. And one of my sales guys came to me and said, I'm trying to check the status of, the Thai place I just signed up on 14th Street.
Oh, so basically email.crm.
Email.crm, but literally walking over to his desk and asking him, where is the paperwork for the Thai place, and he kind of thumbed through it, and about halfway through the stack, he found it and said, "Oh, it's almost ready," whatever. It was taking about 6 or 8 weeks to onboard a merchant, which is crazy, right? Because you have a menu, you have a signature on a contract, and you have some business hours. We implemented Salesforce, and we're now, we're lighting up merchants overnight. So it was a dramatic change. It was kind of low-hanging fruit, so I looked like a hero, but it worked out.
How about yourself, Vivek? What kind of tools or things that you put in place to kind of help manage, once you start getting salespeople on board?
Yeah. I mean, we use Salesforce a ton. It started out with spreadsheets early on and then moved to Salesforce. And you almost want to get there more quickly rather than too late, because suddenly you're playing catch up with being able to measure everything. And it's easy early on to say.
And I don't want to interrupt your flow, but that's kind of an interesting point right then and there is, when do you convert from the proverbial spreadsheet, to a system? Because a lot of folks just figure, okay, well, I'll just kind of, lump along until I have to do something.
It felt like to us that if we had 2 people out there selling and people actually wanted this thing and were able to reproduce that sale a few times, there's something big that could happen here, and you need to have the support system in order to be able to have 10 people out there selling this, and you can't do that on spreadsheets. And importantly, any sale isn't a binary decision. You should know at a very deep level. It's not just a win or a loss. Breaking that down into pieces, did you lose someone in discovery? What's the output of that? What are you capturing to know someone did discovery the right way? The prospect understands your value proposition, that they have a real pain points that you're actually solving. And different salespeople may get stuck in different places, and to be able to break everything down into a simpler structure and understand where each person is sort of in that process and what they need in terms of coaching to get that past that point.
So Jeff, did you put anything in place? I mean, what was like the one thing that had the most value or most impact when you're managing sales?
So, obviously we use a CRM. I kind of forget its name because it's not Salesforce. Look, what I would say in regards to thinking about systems is obviously you need systems to drive process. It is very dangerous to make assumptions based on what you know year 1, even in year 2, about what exactly that process is going to look like. So to go and spend a huge amount of money on a Salesforce, on a Sugar, on something like that, before you really have your process buttoned down is risky, right? Because once you get involved in that system, that's it, right? You own it now for the rest of your company's life. It is really difficult to get off of it, and it is really difficult to make changes. Sorry, Salesforce people. But if you can optimize it and get it set up properly, you're really going to set yourself up for success. So even though we waited until literally 6 months ago to utilize a full CRM, right? We were doing millions and millions of dollars in revenue without a full CRM that was bought. We were using an open source solution. Because that open source solution, not good, but it allowed us to kind of battle test our process and understand what those different stages meant to us, what we wanted the process to be internally, so that when we sat down with the consultant to go through, all right, this is what your CRM process is going to look like within the one we used, it was a much more nuanced and customized process. That being said, I just got a bill for $60,000 because we need to change it a little bit, right? And that is infuriating. But we waited as long as we possibly could. And I do think that that's the appropriate thing to do, to use some sort of open source solution until you get to a point in your process where you can utilize, the big bazooka that'll be brought to bear by one of the bigger CRM platforms.
So, I mean, the lesson learned here is definitely start tracking stuff way early in the process. Whether you need to invest in the big ticket item is obviously questionable, but clearly, if you're not actually measuring it at the very get-go with something, you're definitely going to be in trouble, because there's no way you're going to be able to scale effectively if you don't have something in place and start tracking those metrics. We're all out of time, and so I just want to thank all of our panelists. Round of applause, Mike, Jeff, Vivek, for sharing their time and their insights. I'd like to actually introduce Ludo, who is, where is he? He is essentially heading up partnerships with startups and is an integral part of making Salesforce for startups happen. So I'd like to give the floor up to him to